So at least 17 South Africans who were allegedly lured to fight for Russia in Ukraine have now begun returning home, but their arrival may be less the end of a story and more the beginning of a far bigger one. You see, the group is believed to have left under promises of security training only to find themselves recruited in a foreign war. But you see, as more of these details emerge, it's becoming clear that South Africa may not be an isolated case. So more than 1,000 Kenyans have reportedly been lured to fight for Russia in its war against Ukraine, a dramatic jump from the roughly 200 previously acknowledged by Kenyan authorities. Now that makes Kenya one of the largest known African sources of recruits so far, and it comes after Ukraine's foreign minister claimed last year that more than 1,400 Africans from 36 countries were fighting for Russia. Kenya alone now accounts for a large chunk of that figure. Now, according to an intelligence report presented to Kenya's parliament, these recruitment agencies have been targeting ex-military personnel, police officers, and relatively young civilians, promising them salaries of over $2,000 a month, plus bonuses and even eventual Russian citizenship. Now, many of the recruits believed that they were signing up for work opportunities abroad, not frontline combat. Now, Russia's embassy has denied any involvement, calling the allegations just misleading propaganda. Now, the bigger picture here is uncomfortable. You see, as this war in Eastern Europe continues, African countries are increasingly appearing in the recruitment chain, not as policymakers, but as labor pools. So for governments across the continent, including South Africa, this is no longer just a foreign war playing out overseas. It's a domestic vulnerability sitting here at home. So governments are rethinking what they can and can't control, and that theme doesn't stop there. Germany's move to tighten social media rules for minors suggests that Australia's under-16 ban may not be a once-off. It may be the start of a broader global domino. You see, what began as a bold national experiments in the land down under is now echoing across Europe as governments wrestle with how much access children should really have to platforms whose algorithms shape everything from attention to identity and influence at scale. So in case you missed it, earlier this year, Australia became the first country to introduce a blanket ban on social media for under 16s, forcing platforms to remove underage accounts, block new signups, and verify users through IDs or facial checks. Now, Germany's ruling party has formally backed a motion to curb social media for children under 14, while Poland is exploring similar measures. Now, the concern here is familiar: rising exposure to harmful content, addictive design, and a growing mental health debate around teenage screen time. But you see, once multiple major economies start moving in the same direction, the stakes change. So some analysts argue that platforms can sidestep one regulator, but it becomes a lot harder when several align. And so if more countries follow, tech companies could be forced to redesign systems globally rather than jurisdiction by jurisdiction. You see, the internet was built to be borderless, but governments are now testing what happens when national borders push back. So regulation is one kind of constraint, cost is another, and this one lands closer to home. South Africa may be about to generate electricity from something that we've never commercially used before: waves. A new feasibility study at a port in the Eastern Cape could produce 8.3 megawatts of power from ocean swell alone, enough to supply roughly 5,200 households. Now, you see, in a country still juggling load shedding scars and grid reform, any new source of generation gets attention. Now, this proposal comes from EcoWave Power, a Swedish company which plans to install floating devices along the port's breakwater. And so as the waves rise and fall, hydraulic pistons would drive generators and feed electricity into the grid. And so the pitch is simple: use existing marine infrastructure to add clean power, including at night and the early morning when solar drops off. But here's the tension. You see, wave energy in South Africa is estimated to cost between 5 Rand and 20 Rand per kilowatt hour. Now that's significantly higher than most renewable independent power producers, which average around 2 Rand per kilowatt hour. And so while the ocean may be abundant, affordability isn't. And so for now, this looks less like a breakthrough power replacement and more like a niche addition to the energy mix. And before we cruise on to our bagel bite of the day, here's a couple other headlines worth knowing. For starters, an education department official accused of leaking 7 2025 matric exam papers to her child remains suspended 3 months later. Now, around 40 pupils across 9 Pretoria schools accessed the papers as the final investigation report heads to the minister this week. The Pretoria High Court has ruled that SARS can't simply force taxpayers to pay disputed tax bills up front without properly considering their request to delay payment. You see, in a recent case, the court found that SARS ignored key facts and stepped in, a move that could give taxpayers more breathing room during disputes. And in case you missed it, a US Supreme Court ruling scrapped the 30% tariff on some South African exports, offering brief relief. But the US administration then quickly introduced a new 15% levy under different legislation, leaving exporters facing continued uncertainty over access to a key trading partner. And on to our Bagel Bite of the day. But first, just a side note, if y'all enjoying the show, please can I ask that you like and subscribe. It helps us more than you know. And now, with that out the way, let's see what you got. The question is, which internal organ in the human body can regenerate itself? Is it A, the lung, B, the liver, or C, the kidney? We'll give you the answer at the end of the show. A young female crab-eater seal has been spotted along Cape Town's coastline after traveling an estimated 4,500 kilometers from Antarctica. Now, that's roughly the distance from Cape Town to Lagos, except she swam it. And you see, the species is rarely ever seen in South African waters, which makes this less of a beach sighting and more of a wildlife plot twist. Now, despite the name, crab-eater seals mostly feed on krill, the tiny shrimp-like creatures found in icy southern waters, which makes this landing on a busy South African beach biologically unusual. You see, what experts say, when these seals start ingesting sand, it can be a sign of stress or disorientation. That said, the Two Oceans Aquarium Wildlife Team has stressed that there's no immediate concern for this individual seal. However, they will continue to monitor her. These wildlife teams are asked to cordon off the area, flip a tag her for monitoring, and administer her a rabies vaccine as part of an ongoing seal study. Now, the public has been asked to keep at least 20 meters away from her and let her rest. Because, when something swims thousands of kilometers off course, the least you can do is, not crowd it for a selfie. And as for that Bagel Bite, the answer is the liver. It's the only internal organ in the human body that can regenerate significant portions of itself, even if up to 2/3 is removed, which is, pretty reassuring considering how often it is asked to clean up after the rest of you. And my friends, that's it for today's show. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you guys have all had a cracker start to the week. Wishing a fantastic day further. Remember, be kind to one another, and we'll catch you all tomorrow for the next round of the good stuff. God bless.